There's a before and after in every family, a moment where everything shifts and nothing goes back. For my family, that moment was a Sunday dinner in September, and one sentence my sister said to my 9-year-old daughter when she thought I wasn't listening. My family called what I did next an overreaction. Stay with me, because by the time I'm done, you're going to want to call somebody. My name is Dave Lewis. I'm 39 years old. I live in Riverside, a neighborhood on the west side of Dayton. Nothing fancy, but it's clean, it's quiet, and my daughter Emma knows every dog on our street by name when she visits. Emma's mom Josephine and I dated for 3 years before things fell apart. We just couldn't make it work. When we separated, we sat down like adults and figured out what was best for a little girl who deserved better than her parents' problems. Emma lives with Josephine over in Kettering. I get her every other weekend and every Wednesday. Those days are mine and I guard them like they're gold. That particular Sunday, I'd had her since Friday. We'd done our whole weekend. Pancakes Saturday morning at the place on Linden Avenue she liked. The Park, a movie she'd already seen twice and made me watch anyway. By Sunday we were winding down, doing the slow, comfortable thing that happens at the end of a good weekend together. I was taking her to Mom's on Glenmore Avenue for the family dinner, and dropping her at Josephine's in Kettering after. Normal Sunday. Routine. Nothing about it felt like the kind of night that changes everything. It was, let me tell you about my family. The Lewis are Dayton people going back generations. Mom, Gloria Lewis, still lives in the same house on Glenmore Avenue, where Betty and I grew up. 3 bedrooms, a dining room big enough for a crowd, and a kitchen that always had something on the stove. After Dad passed when I was 24, that house became the anchor. Every second Sunday of the month, everyone came back to it. My sister Betty is 31. She's sharp, funny when she wants to be, and capable of lighting up a room with about 15 minutes of effort. She is also, and I say this as someone who has watched it up close for 3 decades, absolutely convinced the world owes her something. Not in a loud way. In the quiet, entitled way that's somehow harder to address because it never quite gives you a clean moment to call it out. My Uncle Gary and his wife Linda drove up from Centerville for these dinners. My cousins Brett and Kelly rounded out the table. Mom made fried chicken, mac and cheese, collard greens, dinner rolls and cornbread. Every single time, without fail, like clockwork. That kitchen smelled like every good Sunday of my entire childhood. Emma loved these dinners. She'd come through the front door and head straight to Grandma's kitchen to help, which mostly meant sneaking macaroni off the spoon and asking questions about everything within arm's reach. At the table, she'd sit next to me, quiet, watching the adults talk with those big brown eyes that don't miss a single thing. That Sunday, I was in the kitchen helping Mom with the chicken. She was telling me about a leak under her bathroom sink. I was half listening, half thinking about a project deadline at work Monday morning. The dining room was loud. Uncle Gary was holding court about something. Brett was on his phone. Kelly was talking to Linda. Normal noise. Betty was at the far end of the table. Emma was sitting right next to her. I came out of the kitchen, carrying the cornbread basket, and noticed the room had gotten quieter. Not silent, just quieter. The way a room does when something has just been said that everyone heard and nobody's addressing. I looked at Emma first. She was staring at her plate, hands in her lap. Shoulders up around her ears in that way kids do when they're trying to make themselves smaller. I set the cornbread down. "Hey, Bug, you okay?" She nodded without looking up. I looked at Betty. She was cutting her chicken like nothing had happened. Cool. Casual. Reached for her water glass. I sat down. Fixed Emma's plate. Kept watching her. Something was wrong. I could feel it the way you feel a pressure drop before a storm rolls in. About 10 minutes into dinner, I excused myself on my way back through the hallway. I passed the bathroom and stopped cold. Crying. Small, quiet, trying not to be heard crying. I knocked softly. "Emma?" A pause. Then, "I'm okay, Daddy." I opened the door. She was sitting on the edge of the tub, cheeks wet, chin trembling, still trying to hold it together like a little soldier who didn't want to cause trouble. I sat down next to her on that cold porcelain edge and said nothing for a moment. Just put my arm around her. "Tell me," I said. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, took a breath. "Aunt Betty said I wasn't supposed to be here." The floor dropped out from under me. I kept my voice very steady. "What do you mean, baby? What exactly did she say?" Emma picked at the hem of her sweater. She said that's why the family was embarrassed. She said I should know the truth. To a 9-year-old, at a dinner table, in front of cousins who heard every word. I sat on that bathtub edge for about 15 seconds, just breathing, counting. Doing the thing you do when you want to flip a dining room table through a wall and you know you can't. Then I looked at my daughter. My smart sweet didn't ask for any of this little girl, and I said, "Emma Grace, look at me." She looked up. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. You are not a mistake. You are the whole reason. Do you understand me? The whole reason." Her lip wobbled. "Promise?" "I would bet everything I own on it. Stay here 1 minute. Daddy has to go talk to Aunt Betty. Stay with me, because this next part is where it gets real." I walked back into that dining room. 8 people around a table, mac and cheese still steaming, cornbread in the basket, football pregame bleeding through from the living room TV. Normal Sunday. Nothing to see here. I stood at my end of the table and looked at Betty. She glanced up, took a sip of her drink, looked back down. "Betty." My voice was quiet, controlled, the dangerous kind of quiet that people who know me would recognize immediately. "What did you say to Emma?" The table shifted. Uncle Gary looked up. Brett put his phone face down. Betty sighed, actually sighed, like I was already boring her, and said, "I just told her the truth, Dave. Kids need to understand reality. And she's going to grow up eventually." "Betty." I leaned forward on the table. "She is 9. She cannot process what you said the way an adult would. She was crying in the bathroom, alone. What she processed was that her family doesn't want her here. Is that the truth you wanted her to know?" Betty put her fork down, folded her hands, and looked at me with an expression I can only describe as aggressively unbothered. "She was a mistake. She was born out of wedlock, Dave. That's a fact. I didn't say anything bad. You told her the family was embarrassed by her." Silence. And here's the moment I still replay. Betty looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're being dramatic. She'll be fine." My mother put her hand on my arm. "Dave, honey, let's just finish dinner." Uncle Gary cleared his throat. "She didn't mean any harm, son." Kelly looked at her plate. Brett picked his phone back up. And Linda, sweet, quiet Linda from Centerville, said absolutely nothing. My family had just watched Betty tell me my daughter would be fine after being called a mistake in front of witnesses, and their collective response was to ask me to eat my chicken. I stood up straight, picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. "Emma," I called toward the hallway. "Let's go, Bug." Her little feet came down the hall. She appeared in the doorway, puffy-eyed, sweater twisted in her hands. I held my hand out. She came and took it without a word. I looked at my mother, who I love completely, and said quietly, "I'll call you later, Mom." I looked at Betty one last time. She was already reaching for another piece of chicken. We drove in silence. About 15 minutes in, Emma's hand went loose in mine across the center console. She'd fallen asleep. I drove the rest of the way to Kettering, watching the streetlights move across the windshield, one after another, like a countdown. I walked her up to Josephine's door. Josephine took one look at Emma's face. Even half asleep, you could see she'd been crying, and then looked at me. "What happened?" "I'll text you," I said. "She's okay. She just needs to sleep." Josephine pulled her inside gently, gave me a look that said, "We'll talk," and closed the door. I sat in my car in her driveway for a few minutes. Then I drove back to Riverside. And that night, sitting at my kitchen table, I started making a list. If you have been listening for a while, do us one quick favor: subscribe. Hit the like button while you're at it, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Here's the thing about being the person who holds everything together. You become invisible, not dramatically invisible. Not in a nobody loves me way. Just in the practical, daily way where the support you provide becomes so expected, so built into the architecture of everyone else's life, that they forget it's you providing it. They forget it's a choice. They forget the floor they're standing on is your back. I got home that Sunday night, sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a cup of coffee, and I wrote it all down. Let me give you the numbers, because I think you need them. Betty's apartment on Brown Street near the Oregon District, $1,400 a month. I had been co-signing that lease and covering $900 of it monthly for just over 3 years. The building management company had my contact information as the primary financial guarantor. That's $32,400 I had quietly moved into Betty's life. Her car, a 2021 Honda Accord she drove around Dayton like she'd bought it herself. I negotiated that deal at the dealership on Wilmington Pike. She put $2,000 down. I paid off $14,000 of the loan over 22 months. Her insurance? On my policy as a favor, since she couldn't get a decent rate on her own. 2 years of that add-on paid monthly. No discussion. College, 2 semesters at the University of Dayton when her financial aid fell short. $6,800. Paid in full. She said thank you once, over text, with a thumbs up emoji. And then the quiet stuff. The stuff without clean numbers. When Betty's laptop died junior year, I drove to Best Buy in Beaver Creek and bought her a MacBook. $3,500. Her 30th birthday girls' trip to Nashville. I sent her $600 just because. A medical bill she couldn't cover after an urgent care visit. I Venmo'd her $340 at 11 p.m. because she texted me in a panic. Mom got $900 a month. Every month. First of the month, direct transfer, like a utility payment. She never asked me to. But after Dad died, I watched her start clipping coupons for things she used to just buy without thinking. That was enough for me. Did my family know the full extent of this? Some of it. Not all of it. We didn't talk about money growing up. Dad always said it was tacky, so I kept quiet and kept paying, and everyone kept living comfortably. And I assumed that's just what family does. I want you to remember every single word of that, because it matters very, very soon. Monday I went to work, did my job, came home to a quiet house. Tuesday I made 3 phone calls. The first was to the property management company that handled Betty's building on Brown Street. I requested to be removed from the lease guarantee, effective end of the next billing cycle, as permitted under my co-signature agreement. They said they'd notify Betty. I said that was fine. The second was to my insurance company. Betty's car came off my policy. The third was a brief professional email to the billing office at the University of Dayton. Betty was enrolled in a continuing education certification course, the quarterly tuition installment I'd been covering. I notified them I would not be renewing that arrangement after the current term. 3 calls, 40 minutes total. I just stopped, and then I waited for the weather to change. It took 11 days. Day 11, a Thursday evening. I was at Eastwood Field watching Emma's soccer practice. It was one of my Wednesday pickups, extended into Thursday because Josephine had a work thing. Emma was out on the field in her red jersey, completely unbothered by the cold, chasing the ball like it had personally offended her. My phone rang. Betty. Dave. Her voice was already 3 layers deep, past confusion, past irritation, somewhere close to controlled panic. My landlord called me today. He said you've been removed from the lease and I need a new financial guarantor or an increased deposit by the end of the month. What is going on? On the field, Emma stole the ball from a kid twice her size and grinned like she'd won a championship. Hey, Betty, I said. Don't hey, Betty me. What did you do? I updated my financial arrangements, simplifying things. You pulled out of my lease without telling me? Dave, I cannot cover that apartment alone right now. You know that. I know. Pause. What does that mean, you know? So you're just going to let me get evicted? I'm not letting anything happen. I'm just not preventing it anymore. There's a difference. This is because of the dinner. Her voice shifted into that register, the one where she reframes everything to make herself the victim. I cannot believe you're punishing me financially because you got your feelings hurt over a conversation. Betty, I stopped her. You told my 9-year-old daughter she was a mistake, in front of the whole family. And when I addressed it, you told me I was being dramatic. The whole table agreed with you. I was just trying to... I know what you were trying to do. And the family agreed you were right, and I overreacted. I let that land for a moment. So I'm taking everyone's advice. I stopped overreacting. I'm not reacting at all anymore. I'm just making different choices with my money. Long silence. Dave, I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. And this might surprise you, because it surprised me. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. And certain. Thank you, I said. I mean that. But Betty, Emma hasn't slept right since that Sunday. She asked Josephine last week if Grandma was embarrassed of her. She's 9 years old. That sorry doesn't reach her. Silence. When she's okay, I said, we can talk about what family looks like going forward. But right now, I need you to understand that what you said had a cost, and I'm done being the one who absorbs it. I hung up. On the field, Emma waved at me from midfield. I waved back. We're not even at the hardest part yet. Keep going. After Betty made her call, the rest of the family followed like dominoes. 2 days later, Saturday morning, Uncle Gary called while I was making breakfast. Gary is a decent man, genuinely means well. but he has a deep instinct to smooth things over, which means he sometimes ends up defending the wrong person because conflict makes him physically uncomfortable. Dave, buddy. Road noise in the background. He was driving somewhere. I heard from your mom that Betty's having some trouble with her apartment situation. Yep, she said you pulled out of something. I don't know all the details. Her lease. I was the financial guarantor. I ended that arrangement. Okay. The Gary hum while he processed. Dave, look, I understand you were upset about what happened at dinner. But don't you think this is a little extreme? I cracked eggs into the pan. Thought about Emma in that bathroom. Thought about her shoulders up around her ears. Uncle Gary, I said, how long have I been co-signing Betty's lease? I didn't actually know you were. 3 years. How much of her car did I pay off? Beat. I didn't know about that either. Dave, nobody knew, I said, because I didn't make it a thing. I just did it. For years. Because I thought that's what family meant. I paused. And then Betty told my daughter she was a mistake, and the whole table told me I overreacted. So here we are. Quiet on the line. Real quiet. Not the bristling kind. I didn't know any of that, he said finally. I'm sorry, son. I genuinely didn't. I know you didn't, Uncle. That's kind of the whole point. Mom called Sunday. From her landline, she opened with, Have you eaten today? Yeah, Mom. Lunch. What did you have? Leftover chicken. That's not enough, David. We did the mom thing for a few minutes. How's Emma? She's good. How's work? It's fine. Is your heat working because the temperature's dropping? Then the real reason moved in like a weather front. Betty came by yesterday. She's scared, Dave. I know. She might lose that apartment. I know. Don't you think? Mom. I sat down, kept my voice gentle, because this was my mother, and I loved her, and none of this was her fault. Do you know what Emma said to Josephine last week? She asked if Grandma was embarrassed of her. A 9-year-old girl is now wondering if her grandmother is ashamed of her because of how she came into this world. That's what Betty put in her head. Silence. Emma didn't do anything, I said. She just existed. She came to Sunday dinner and sat next to her aunt, and her aunt decided that was the moment to educate her on family shame. My voice stayed even. It cost me something to keep it that way. I've been carrying this family quietly for a long time, Mom. And I don't say that to make you feel bad. I say it because when nobody at that table backed me up, when Betty told me I was being dramatic and everyone went back to eating, that was the moment I realized the weight wasn't being shared, and I put it down. Mom was crying quietly. I could tell by her breathing. I love you, I said. Your $900 comes first of the month like always. That doesn't change. But I can't keep funding a life for someone who hurt my daughter and called it doing her a favor. We stayed on the line for a while after that. Not really talking. Just existing together the way you do with people you've known your whole life. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my house in Riverside and thought about my dad. Wondered what he would have said. Figured it would have been something short, direct, and exactly right. 3 weeks after the dinner on Glenmore Avenue, on a Wednesday evening in October, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I'd just picked Emma up from Josephine's for my Wednesday. She was at my kitchen table doing homework, very concerned about a diagram involving clouds and the water cycle. I went to the door. It was Betty. She looked different. Not performance different. Not rehearsed apology different. Genuinely worn down. Hair pulled back, a coat I recognized from 4 years ago, eyes that had the kind of tired in them that doesn't come from one bad week. I'm not here to fight, she said. First words out of her mouth. I'm not here to ask for anything. I needed to come. I looked at her for a moment, then I stepped aside and let her in. Emma looked up from her homework when we came through. Her expression did something complicated. A flash of recognition, a shadow of that Sunday. And then, because she was Emma and she was 9 and somehow already better than most adults I know, she looked back down at her worksheet. Betty stood near the kitchen doorway looking at Emma like she was trying to figure out what to say, and coming up completely empty. I was about to offer coffee, break the tension, do the adult thing, when Emma quietly got up from her chair. She went to her backpack hanging by the back door, dug around in it, came back into the kitchen. She walked over to Betty and held out a folded piece of paper. Betty looked at me. I shook my head. I don't know. And she took it. She unfolded it. I moved to where I could see it over Betty's shoulder. It was written in Emma's handwriting, that careful, slightly too big cursive she'd been practicing, some letters in pencil, some in purple marker, a small drawing of a sun in the corner because Emma put a sun on everything. It said, "Dear Aunt Betty, my dad told me I wasn't a mistake. He said I was his whole reason, and that I should never forget that. I looked up what out of wedlock means, and I don't think it means what you said it means. I forgive you because my dad says that's what strong people do even when it's hard. But I want you to know it really hurt my feelings, and I cried for a long time. I decided to tell you because I think you should know. Emma Grace Lewis. P.S. I am not embarrassed of our family." The kitchen went completely silent. Betty stood there and read it, then read it again. The paper was shaking slightly in her hand. And then Betty, my sharp, unbothered, eye-rolling sister who had sat at that dinner table and told me I was being dramatic, sat down in one of my kitchen chairs and put her face in her hands and cried. Not performance crying. Not strategic crying. The ugly, collapsed kind that comes when something finally breaks through a wall you've spent years building. Emma watched her for a moment. Then she walked over, patted Betty on the shoulder twice, very businesslike, very 9 years old, and went back to her homework. I put the kettle on. We sat at my kitchen table until almost 9 o'clock. Betty talked. Real talk, not deflection, not reframing. She talked about growing up after Dad died, watching me handle everything, feeling like she could never catch up, and how somewhere along the way that turned into a resentment she didn't fully understand, and clearly never managed. Did I excuse what she said to Emma? No, that can never happen again, I told her. Not to her, not to anyone. What you said was cruel, Betty. I don't care about the psychology behind it. She nodded, didn't push back. Did I write a check? Reinstate the lease? Call the insurance company back? No. When Emma stops flinching, I said, we can talk about what being a family looks like going forward. And I mean that. I do want to get there. But you need to sit with this a little longer. What you're feeling right now. That's the weight of what you said. It's supposed to be there. Betty looked over at Emma. Still at the table, worksheet nearly finished, sun drawing complete, purple marker cap back on. She's incredible, Betty said quietly. Yeah, I said. She is. She didn't get that from the people who called her a mistake. Betty winced. Fair. She left around 9. I stood on the porch and watched her taillights disappear down the street. Dad? Emma called from inside. Yeah, Bug. Is condensation the part where water goes up or comes down? Comes down. Going up is evaporation. I had it backwards. Happens to everyone. Pause. Dad? Yeah. Are you okay? I stood on my porch in Riverside, Ohio, on a cold Thursday night in October, with the porch light on and the quiet of the street around me. I thought about everything that had happened in the last 3 weeks. The dinner, the bathroom, the legal pad, the phone calls, the letter, the kitchen table. I'm good, I said. Come on, let's finish that worksheet and get you back to Mom's. I want to close with something, because I know what some of you are thinking. Dave, did you go too far? Let me answer that cleanly. The discomfort my family felt in those weeks was not cruelty. It was consequence. And consequence is not the same thing as punishment. What Betty said to Emma at that table, that was cruelty. Small, casual, delivered over Sunday dinner like it cost her nothing. Aimed at a child who had done absolutely nothing except exist. And my family told me I overreacted. So let me be very clear about what I was reacting to. I was reacting to my daughter sitting on the edge of a bathtub, holding herself together, trying to be okay for my sake. I was reacting to 9 years of watching Emma Grace Lewis walk into every room and make it better just by being in it, and then watching someone try to make her feel like a problem to be explained. I reacted to the truth that nobody else at that table was going to. Was it satisfying? Not the way people mean when they use that word. It wasn't fun. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like doing something that had to be done by someone who finally understood that waiting for someone else to do it was the real mistake. The real mistake. Not Emma. Never Emma. The Sunday dinners on Glenmore Avenue started back up in January. Different. Quieter in some ways, more honest in others. Betty comes. She sits near the middle of the table now. She brought Emma a book about a girl who solves mysteries with her dog. She'd remembered from some earlier dinner that Emma loved dog stories. Emma said thank you politely, the way you do when you're 9 and not quite sure how you feel about something yet, but you were raised right. Progress doesn't always look like a movie ending. Sometimes it looks like a kid saying a polite thank you over a book about a dog. I'll take it. Uncle Gary pulled me aside in the kitchen that January, handed me a beer, and said, I had no idea how much you were carrying, son. I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry about what I said on the phone. I shook his hand, told him it was okay. Because it was. Mom made her fried chicken that night. The real kind, seasoned overnight, fried slow. First time in months. It tasted like it always had. Like Glenmore Avenue. Like Sunday afternoons. Like a family that is broken in some places and held together in others, still figuring out what they owe each other and what they don't. Like most families, if we're being honest. Emma got a 97 on her water cycle diagram. She was annoyed about the 3 points. I told her 97 was excellent. She said she knew exactly what she'd gotten wrong, and she wanted a chance to fix it. That's my kid. That's my whole reason. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. I will see you on the next one.